Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tim Young. I am the new division director for the soon-to-be Jefferson County Case Management Agency. I'm going to introduce the leadership team that we've started to develop here at Jefferson County, which includes Disha Kemp, who has been with the county for the last 2 years working in single entry point, Jessica Thayer, who has worked with Jefferson County for the last 4 years, but has been working on waivers and case management for the last 15 years. And then we're very happy to introduce Liz Parr, who has been leading resource coordination over at DDRC for the last 30 years. She has agreed to join us over at the county and help us set up the new seat.
My name is Rob DeHerrera, and I'm the Executive Director of Developmental Disabilities Resource Center, or DDRC.
We're going to talk just briefly about what Medicaid waivers are before we get into really what case management redesign is. What Medicaid is essentially an insurance program. It's an insurance program that many of our community members already participate in, and within that program are waivers. And there are waivers that Jefferson County has been serving for some time now. Most of those are medical waivers, and there are waivers that DDRC serves as well.
DDRC is the Community Center Board and is currently the single point of entry for all individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Jefferson, Clear Creek, Gilpin, and Summit counties. We assist individuals and families with intellectual and developmental disabilities access services through these waivers. As you can see up above, it lists the number of waivers that DDRC is currently overseeing, including the Developmental Disabilities Waiver, often referred to as comprehensive, which has the residential component. We have the Supported Living Services Waiver, the Children's Extensive Support Waiver, the Children's Habilitation Residential Program Waiver, Children's Home and Community-Based Services Waiver. In addition, DDRC currently operates a couple of state-specific programs, including State Supported Living Services, the Family Support Services Program, and Quality Assurance. I'd also like to remind you that DDRC provides a full array of direct services that will not be impacted by this change that I'll touch on later.
As I said before, Jefferson County has also been working with our community members around waivers. Most of those are medical waivers. The waivers that we currently serve include the brain injury waiver, the community mental health supports waiver, elderly blind and disabled waiver, spinal cord injury waiver, Children's Home and Community Service Waiver, and the Children with Life-Limiting Illness Waiver. So perhaps many of you have heard about many of the things that are affecting the case management agencies and service of these waivers throughout the state of Colorado. We're calling it the perfect storm. It's impacting all long-term supports and services. There are three components to the perfect storm. The first being that we are coming out of a public health emergency. And as you know, during the quarantine and throughout the public health emergency, many things were done to make sure that service were continuous and people were being served throughout that emergency, one of which was continuous eligibility. As the public health emergency unwinds, there is a lot of work to be done to reassess and make sure that everybody is getting their services appropriately. So that is one of the things that is significant right now. Additionally, there's the implementation of a new case management system or IT system for the state of Colorado, and it has not quite lived up to its billing at this time. As is with any new IT system, there are bumps along the way, and case and care management system in Jefferson County or in the state of Colorado is not quite working as well as we hope. Some of you may have seen that with notices of termination when they weren't correct and things like that. HCPF is currently addressing those issues regularly, and there are significant improvements being made, but that is another piece that is affecting case management right now. The last of that is this case management redesign. This has been coming for several years. In fact, Rob will talk a little bit more about the history of it shortly, but it just so happened to coincide with the new IT system and with the public health emergency unwind, just to kind of make for more potential issues that can arise. And so all of these things, we are working diligently to make sure that they don't affect your benefits, but there are still times when they do.
So case management redesign, as Tim mentioned earlier, what is happening here? Well, this transition is actually technically occurring over the time period of March 1 through July 1st, 2024. And we're in the middle of that right now. We're part of what is called Phase 3 of case management redesign. No actions required on your behalf. DDRC will be working with each case management agency to transition your case management services. For those of you in Gilpin and Summit County who might be attending this, DDRC will be providing additional information about the case management transitions later this spring. So as you can see on this slide, for those of you in Jefferson and Clear Creek counties, the new case management agency will be Jefferson County Human Services. Those of you in Gilpin County, the new case management agency will be Adult Care Management, Inc., or ACMI, and they have recently rebranded their name to ANI Avenues. For those of you in Summit County, your new case management agency will be Garfield County. Everybody currently receiving case management services from DDRC should have received a letter now identifying who your new case management agency is. So how did we get here? Well, starting in 2021, the state passed a law called Long-Term Services and Supports Case Management Redesign. Within this law, it was a redesign of the entire case management system for all individuals accessing long-term supports and services, including the waivers both Tim and I discussed earlier. And all community center boards like DDRC who provide intellectual and developmental disabilities case management, and single entry points like Jefferson County Human Services who provide case management for the non-IDD waivers, and some private case management entities were impacted. The law essentially says all case management services would be performed by a singular case management agency in that region for all long-term supports and services, including those with intellectual and developmental disabilities. The goal of this legislation was to provide a more streamlined access for anyone accessing case management services, among another of other items. But it also was intended to resolve an issue called conflict-free case management. Conflict-free case management is a federal rule that has been in existence since 2014. Essentially, what the federal rule says is that an agency cannot provide both case management and direct service to the same individual as there's a potential for a conflict of interest. So for many organizations like DDRC, we could no longer provide both case management and direct services as we had done since the inception of the Community Center Board system over 60 years ago. And that is why we are here.
So what happens if you have been being served by DDRC and a particular caseworker for the last several years, but you're currently not living in Jefferson and Clear Creek County, but you would like to maintain that caseworker because you've heard that they're moving over to Jefferson County? Jefferson County Human Services will consider making exceptions to provide case management services to members enrolled in HCBS waiver programs who reside outside of Jefferson and Clear Creek County that meet the following criteria. First and foremost, that member resides within the Front Range urban corridor, which includes Adams, Arapahoe, Boulder, Broomfield, Denver, and Douglas County, and their residence is within 30-mile radius of Jefferson County Human Services, located 900 Jefferson County Parkway. And that the member has requested receiving case management services from JCHS or Jefferson County using the established exceptions process. And what that process is, as it stands right now, is you would, if you are currently working with DDRC, you will let DDRC know that you intend or you would like to be considered for the exception and put under the exception list, so that as long as you meet that criteria, you will move over and remain with Jefferson County and perhaps that same caseworker. There is one portion of the exceptions process. If you are being served through Family Support Services Program or State Supported Living Services, those programs are not eligible for an exception and they must be served in the county where you live.
So the key case management redesign takeaways is it does impact all waiver recipients, all community center boards, and all single entry points within the state of Colorado. It also impacts those receiving services through the Family Support Services Program, State Supported Living Services, and Quality Assurance. And as Tim just mentioned, it is important to note that individuals accessing both family support and state SLS must access those services from the case management agency in the county in which they reside. It will also create a singular case management agency for each designated service area. One agency can no longer provide both case management and direct services in an existing area. Then ultimate implementation of case management redesign deadline is July 1st, 2024.
So with the mutual goal of not disrupting services or benefits to any member, Jefferson County and DDRC have been working diligently to make this transition as easy as possible. For those of you that are currently receiving case management at Jefferson County on a medical waiver, very little will change for you other than perhaps will be called a case management agency. For those of you that have been receiving services through DDRC, for all of the IDD waivers, your case management services will move over on July 1. That doesn't mean that your services necessarily are going to change, but your case manager and your case management will move.
So the foundation of Developmental Disabilities Resource Center, DDRC, and the Community Centers Board system was built on providing an integrated delivery model for both case management and direct services over 60 years ago. For many, that was the only option to institutional placement for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. As a result, DDRC will no longer be providing waiver case management, but will continue to provide a full array of services, including residential, day program, transportation, early intervention and service coordination, behavioral health, recreation, to name only a few. We will continue to be here to serve you and the unmet needs of the community into the future. With all these changes that were occurring, we actually approached Jefferson County nearly 3.5 years ago to find a mutual solution for those that we serve, our staff, and our community. It's been a lot of work and an incredibly long process, and I'd personally like to thank Jefferson County for all of their efforts, including Mary Berg, the Director of Human Services, Lene Flora, Tim Young, and also the Board of County Commissioners for supporting their work on this effort.
The guiding principles. So Jefferson County and DDRC had embarked on this with some very, very strong guiding principles. The most important one was to try to minimize the disruption for individuals and their families, and to also recruit and maintain a workforce that can do this work and do this work well. So a couple of the questions that continue to come up are, will I get a new case manager and will my benefits change? And so the answer to the second question is no. This should not affect your benefits. You should see very little change with respect to what you're currently doing with your case manager. With respect to getting a new case manager, there is, yes, a possibility that will happen. We are actively recruiting and hiring as many of the DDRC employees that are willing to move over. Our intention in doing that is not only to have subject matter experts, but also to have people remain with their case manager whenever possible. Now, there are some holes at this point. Not everybody chose to move over, and so there will be some shifting of some cases, but for the most part, if your case manager is moving over, we are going to try to keep you with that case manager. DDRC, so the timing, this is one more reminder that with respect to your case management services or your case management, that will switch beginning July 1. For the time being, you would continue to interact with DDRC as you have been, but as of July 1st, you will have a new case management agency, perhaps the same case manager, but perhaps not. We intend to try to let people know, all members know who their case manager is by the second week of June so that they can know who they're supposed to reach out to and talk to, and that there won't be any disruption in your day-to-day benefits. Becoming a case management agency, what have we been doing to prepare for this? The county and DDRC have been working very, very closely together to prepare for this transition. This work has been going on for the past 3 years, although once the contract was awarded to Jefferson County in June of 2023, that work began in earnest to get us as ready and prepare us as well as we can be to take on the role as a case management agency. I think it's important to note that both the Board of Directors of DDRC as well as the Jefferson County Board of County Commissioners were unanimously in support of Jefferson County applying for and then later receiving the contract. And so that collaboration has been built from that foundation. What does it mean for the county? It means up to 77 new employees, a completely new division that has never existed before. It will be a case management agency, or that will be what the division is called. And that we are currently working, and as I said before, actively trying to recruit and hire as many of the DDRC employees as we can. Let's talk just a little bit about our work to be ready to serve by July 1. In personnel, we have been lucky enough to bring over a large portion of the management team, the leadership team at DDRC, which includes, as I said earlier, Liz Parr, who has been with DDRC for the past 30 years in a leadership role, as well as 7 of the supervisors that were currently working on the various IDD waivers, as well as the state services. We also were able to promote some of our internal single entry point staff into supervisor positions, and we feel like we have a very strong leadership team put together. At this time, we are currently putting offers out and recruiting case managers. There will be like I said before, not everybody decided to come over, and so there will be some holes that we're going to fill. We have currently reposted that position to fill those holes so that we can be as staffed up as possible come July 1. From the operations side of things, we are actively writing policies and procedures to help us with our startup, making sure that our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted with respect to what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. As I said before, this type of case management is not new to Jefferson County. We have been doing that as part of the single entry point. What is new is this population, and there are some areas that we are working on to make sure that we are in a good position to serve this population as well as our current population. Within facilities, we are currently working on new computers, cell phones, furniture, just to make sure that we are ready to go as of July 1, and that the caseworkers have the ability to do their jobs and you have the ability to contact your caseworker. And then with respect to communication, we are committing to continue to give you as much information as we can as the next month and a half goes by. We will be giving both Jefferson County and DDRC will be giving regular updates on their websites, newsletters, and we also intend, following this town hall and after the rollout in July, to do another town hall type meeting so that as the transition occurs, if we're missing the boat somewhere, we're missing the mark, we'll be able to hear that directly from you and we know what we needed to improve on. So again, the CMA will go live in July 1 of 2024. We will be serving nearly 4,000 community members in Jefferson County to live inclusively in our community. Again, please pay attention to both the DDRC and Jefferson County website. There will be newsletters, letters from the directors, and just kind of keep letting you know what we're doing and how things are progressing. And with that, we thank you very much. You'll see the Jefferson County CMA website. If you want it, just the simplest way to do it is just simply Google Jefferson County CMA to get that website to pull. If you have direct and specific questions about your situation or how it might affect your situation, the below email address is actually being manned by the management team and myself right now. If you have a specific question, please just send it to us and we will do our best to answer that question as quickly as we can. Thank you for being here tonight.